minus 64 degrees. At that temperature, gasoline turns to mush. Steel becomes brittle as glass, and an unprotected human face gets frostbite in 45 seconds. I am standing in the middle of the Canadian tundra, and my eyelashes have frozen into an icy crust. Every breath sears my throat as though I am swallowing broken glass. And 20 meters from me, a thin wisp of steam rises from a snow mound. Inside, a family of 5 is sitting in t-shirts. This is not a joke, not an exaggeration, not editing tricks. The Inuit learned to heat dwellings in the coldest inhabited place on the planet, without electricity, without gas, without firewood, because there are no trees for 1,000 kilometers in any direction. The only fuel they have is fat, seal fat, caribou fat, whale fat, and one stone lamp the size of a soup plate. I came here to understand how it works, how you can heat a home with a flame that is barely visible, how you can survive where nature itself insists that you die. My name is Nobody. I am just a person from the city who is used to pressing a button on a thermostat. My greatest survival experience was when the heating in my apartment was shut off for 2 days in November. I slept in 3 sweaters and complained to everyone I knew. Here, in Nunavut, my experience is worth absolutely nothing. Alayak met me at the airstrip, if you can call a strip of packed snow where our plane landed an airstrip. He is past 50. His face is like a topographic map. Every wrinkle is a separate story. He shook my hand and said one word. "Cold," said Alayak. I nodded because I could no longer manage to speak. My lips went numb within a minute of stepping off the plane. I was wearing 4 layers of clothing, thermal underwear costing $200, a down jacket advertised for Arctic expeditions, and I was shaking so hard my teeth were chattering against each other. Alayak was wearing a caribou parka. 1 layer. He was not shaking. That was the first thing I understood. My 4 layers of synthetics lose to 1 layer of caribou hide. Lose by a crushing margin. Because caribou fur is not just fur. Each hair is hollow inside, filled with air. Imagine millions of tiny thermoses pressed tightly together. No modern insulation can replicate this. None. Engineers have tried. They failed. Next to Alayak stood his nephew Nanook, 23 years old, broad shoulders, calm eyes. He was loading bundles and bags onto a sled. The sled was wooden, its runners sheathed in bone. An Arctic pickup truck without an engine, I thought. Pulling power? 8 dogs. The dogs. That was the first thing I heard, even before I saw people. Barking, yelping, hoarse howling. 8 Canadian Inuit dogs, each the size of a small wolf. They strained forward, pulling the traces taut. Steam from their mouths rose in columns. They were happy. For them, minus 64 is an ordinary workday. Nanook gestured for me to sit on the sled. I sat. More precisely, I tried to sit, slipped, and fell on my side. Nanook did not laugh. He simply offered his hand. I thought he had enormous patience. He would need it. We left the settlement heading toward the open tundra. Alayak wanted to show me how an igloo is built. Not a tourist one, not for photographs. A real one. The kind you can live in for weeks at temperatures that crack metal. The dogs carried us forward. The speed was astonishing. The runners glided over the snow with a quiet hiss, as if someone were slowly tearing silk. Wind struck my face. I pulled my balaclava up to my eyes, then pulled on goggles. Alayak rode with his face exposed. He looked ahead, squinting, reading the tundra like a book. After 20 minutes, he raised his hand. The dogs stopped. Silence. The kind of silence that does not exist in a city. No cars, no airplanes, no hum of power lines. Only my pulse in my ears and the quiet creak of snow under Alayak's feet. He walked in circles. Literally. He moved in a spiral, from time to time plunging a long probe into the snow, something resembling a thin spear. He probed, listened, moved on. I did not understand what he was looking for. "Here," he said at last. Nanook nodded. He was already pulling out a long knife with a bone handle. The blade was from an old saw, reground by hand. An Inuit multi-tool, I thought. Has been working for 4,000 years. Olayak explained to me later what he had been looking for. The right snow. Not just any snow is suitable for an igloo. You need snow that has been compressed by wind, dense but not icy. The kind from which you can cut blocks that hold their shape yet still allow a little air through. Too soft and it crumbles. Too hard and it will not breathe. An igloo must breathe. It is a living structure. Nanook began cutting blocks. Each block was roughly 60 centimeters long, 40 wide, 20 thick. He cut them from beneath his feet, from the very platform on which he stood. This is important. The pit that remains becomes the floor of the igloo. The floor is lower than the entrance level. Cold air is heavier than warm air. It flows downward and out through the entrance. Warm air stays inside, up top, where people sleep. I watched Nanook cut snow and thought about physics. The simplest principle of convection. Warm rises, cold sinks. We learned this in school and forget it. The Inuit did not learn it in school. They simply built homes in which this principle works perfectly. 4,000 years of practice without a single textbook. Olayak began laying the first ring of blocks in a circle. The diameter was roughly 3 meters. For a family of 5, that is enough. He set the blocks with a slight inward lean. Each successive row leaned a little more. A spiral. An igloo is not built in rows, but in one continuous spiral that rises and narrows until it closes into a dome. I asked permission to help. Olayak looked at me the way a head chef looks at someone who offers to help cook while holding a knife by the blade. But he nodded. I was given a task. Carry blocks. Each block weighs roughly 15 kilograms. Not heavy, I thought. After the third block, I realized I was wrong. In the cold, everything is heavier. Muscles stiffen, fingers lose feeling, breathing falters. After the 10th block, I sat down to rest. By that point, Nanook had already cut 30. The speed at which they worked was inhuman. No, that is wrong. It was precisely human. It was my speed that was inhuman, in the sense of unfit for a human in the Arctic. They moved economically. Not a single wasted motion, not a single wasted step. Each block landed exactly in place on the first try. In 40 minutes, the dome was closed. 40 minutes. A fully functional dwelling made of snow, capable of withstanding hurricane-force wind, built by 2 people in 40 minutes. I need an hour and a half to assemble a store-bought cabinet following the instructions, with pictures. Olayak carved the entrance tunnel. Low, narrow. You have to crawl on all 4s. This is not a design flaw. It is a brilliant engineering move. A narrow entrance does not let wind through. A low entrance, lower than floor level, works as a cold air trap. The tunnel is a ventilation valve that lets in exactly as much air as is needed for breathing and for the lamp's flame, but does not let heat escape. I crawled inside and froze in place. Inside it was quiet. Absolutely quiet. The wind that howled outside like a pack of wolves had turned here into a distant whisper. Light came through the walls. The snow blocks glowed with a soft bluish light, as though I had found myself inside a giant nightlight. It was beautiful. Truly beautiful. Not postcard beautiful. Not for social media. Beautiful the way things are beautiful when they are created for survival and happen to turn out perfect. But inside it was still cold, roughly -20. Better than -64 outside, but still far from comfortable. Walls of snow are insulation, not a heat source. For heat, you need her. Kulik. Olayak spoke the word with such reverence, as though he were introducing me to a living person. A kulik is a stone lamp, a flat bowl carved by hand from soapstone, the size of a large soup plate, 3 to 4 centimeters deep. Along the edge, a long wick made of dried Arctic moss. Nanook took a piece of seal fat from a bag, white, dense, the size of a brick.
He placed it in the bowl of the kulik. At room temperature, well, at the temperature that was currently inside the igloo, the fat remained solid. Nanook took out a fire striker. 2 stones, several strikes, a spark. The moss caught. The flame was small.
So small that at first I thought it would go out. A yellow tongue, no bigger than a candle flame. It licked the edge of the fat. The fat began to melt slowly. The melted fat soaked into the moss. The moss burned brighter. The flame grew. Within 5 minutes, a steady strip of fire ran along the entire edge of the kulik. Quiet, calm, almost odorless. I waited for the catch. Where was the big fire? Where was the real flame? Where was the heat that would warm this icy room? There was no catch. This is all the fire there is. A strip of flame 2 fingers high. And it is capable of raising the temperature inside the igloo to plus 15 to 20 degrees, while outside it is minus 64. A difference of 80 degrees, from one stone plate with burning fat. I did not believe it, honestly. I sat and waited for Olayak to pull a portable heater out of his bag and say he had been joking. But he did not. He sat by the kulik and waited. And I began to feel it. First my nose stopped freezing. Then my cheeks. Then my fingers began to tingle. Circulation was returning. After 20 minutes, I unzipped my down jacket. After 30, I took off my hat. After an hour, I was warm. The physics of this process is ruthlessly elegant. Seal fat is one of the most calorie-dense materials on the planet. 1 kilogram of seal fat contains roughly 9,000 kilocalories. That is more than wood, more than coal, comparable to diesel fuel. Fat burns slowly, evenly, and almost all the heat stays inside. Because the snow walls of an igloo are a perfect thermos. Snow is 95% air. Air is the worst conductor of heat after a vacuum. An igloo wall 20 centimeters thick insulates no worse than a brick wall half a meter thick. Heat from the kulik warms the air inside. Warm air rises to the dome. The dome is smooth, rounded. Condensation does not drip, it runs down the walls. The inner surface of the snow melts slightly, then freezes again, forming a thin, icy crust. This crust makes the walls even stronger and even more airtight. Olayak watched me with a faint smile. He had seen this expression before. On journalists, on scientists, on tourists. The expression of a person who has just realized that 4,000 years of engineering thought cannot be replaced by a $500 down jacket. "Warm?" asked Olayak. I nodded. I was ashamed of my down jacket. Nanook hung a small bone frame above the kulik. On the frame he placed a piece of caribou meat. The fat from the kulik gave off enough heat to cook food slowly. Not fry, not boil over a strong flame. Slowly braise. An Arctic slow cooker running on seal fat. The meat cooked for about 3 hours, but there was nowhere to hurry. In the Arctic there is nowhere to hurry at all. The hasty do not survive here. While the meat braised, Olayak talked. Not much. The Inuit are not a talkative people. Every word is like a block in an igloo. Precise, in its place. Nothing superfluous. He told me about the kulik. This lamp belonged to his mother, and before her to his grandmother. The stone was quarried 300 kilometers from here. Soapstone, steatite. Soft, easy to work, but it grows stronger when heated. The perfect material for a lamp. The bowl is carved so that fat flows toward the wick evenly. The rim is beveled at a specific angle. If the angle is wrong, the fat will burn unevenly, produce soot, stink. A proper kulik produces almost no soot at all. A proper kulik is a work of art disguised as a household object. Women tend the kulik, said Olayak. That is their work, their science. He stressed the word science. And he was right. Managing a kulik is a skill passed from mother to daughter. You need to know how much fat to add, how long to leave the wick, when to trim the charred edge of the moss so the flame does not smoke. How to position the lamp relative to the entrance so that the draft does not blow out the fire, but air still circulates. 1 lamp heats. 2 lamps, that is already hot. 3 lamps, and the snow will start melting from the inside, and that is a catastrophe. I asked what would happen if the igloo melted from the inside. Aliak looked at me the way a pilot looks at a passenger who has asked what would happen if the wings fell off. Bad, he said. Nanook smirked. It was the first time I saw anything on his face other than calm concentration. Apparently my question was very stupid, but funny enough. Temperature control inside an igloo is balancing on a knife's edge. Too cold, and people freeze. Too warm, and the walls melt. The structure weakens. The ceiling can collapse. The ideal temperature at sleeping platform level is plus 15 to 20 degrees. At floor level, around 0. Near the ceiling, plus 25 to 30. This gradient, the vertical temperature difference, is not a side effect. It is a design feature. The sleeping platform is a raised snow shelf at the far end of the igloo, opposite the entrance. The highest point inside. That is where the warmest air collects. The platform is covered with caribou hides, fur side up. You lie on the fur, cover yourself with fur. Between you and the icy snow are 10 centimeters of air inside the hollow hairs of caribou. You fall asleep in warmth. I lay down on the platform. The hides were soft, incredibly soft. My $300 sleeping bag, rated to -30, lay beside me, pathetic and unnecessary. I covered myself with the caribou hide. Warmth embraced me like a hot bath. Outside, the wind howled. The walls of the igloo glowed softly. The kulik flickered with a steady golden light. It smelled of caribou meat and faintly of seal fat. A sweet, rich smell. Not unpleasant. Homey. I thought that this was the coziest home I had ever been in.
A home without a foundation, without brick walls, without a tile roof. A home built from frozen water and heated by burning fat. A home that tomorrow could melt and vanish. And because of that, it seemed even more precious. Olayak woke me with a touch on the shoulder. I did not know how long I had slept. In the Arctic winter, there is no difference between day and night. Darkness outside, the soft light of the kulik inside. Time here is measured not by hours, but by actions. You woke up. That means it is time. The kulik was burning. It had burned all night. Steadily, calmly. The wick had shortened slightly. The fat had settled a bit. Someone had trimmed the moss and added a fresh piece of fat. I had not heard. I had slept like the dead. For the first time in 3 days in the Arctic, I slept without waking from the cold. Nanook was already sitting by the entrance. He was sharpening a knife. The sound of metal on stone. Quiet. Rhythmic. Like a metronome.
I thought that this sound is probably one of the most ancient sounds of human civilization. People sharpened blades long before they learned to write. Today we go for seal, said Auleak. Not for sport, not for entertainment, for fat. Fat is life. Fat is warmth. Without fat, the kulik goes out. Without the kulik, the igloo turns into a freezer. Without warmth, a person dies. The chain is simple and merciless. Seal, fat, fire, life. We went outside. The blast of cold after the warm igloo was like a slap. Instant, brutal. My lungs clenched, my eyes watered. The tears froze immediately. I stood blinking, trying to unstick eyelashes coated in frost. Oleak was already walking ahead. He did not look back. He knew I would catch up. Or I would not. In the Arctic, no one waits. We walked toward the sea ice, about 4 kilometers across open tundra. Wind blew in our faces. The temperature, those same -64. With wind, it feels like -75. I did not know the human body could feel -75. Now I know. It is not cold. It is pain. Every exposed patch of skin burns. Does not freeze. Burns. The brain confuses the signals. Nerve endings cannot distinguish extreme cold from a burn. Olayak walked steadily. His steps were short and even. He did not break through the snow. I broke through every 10 steps. My boots, modern, insulated, with a membrane and 3 layers of insulation, were too heavy and too rigid. His comics, boots made of sealskin, were soft, light, and distributed weight across the surface. He glided over the snow. I stomped through it. The difference. Nanook carried a harpoon on his shoulder. Not a museum exhibit, a working tool. A shaft of driftwood, a bone point, lashing of caribou sinew. Next to the harpoon, a modern stainless steel knife hung on a strap. Traditional and modern, side by side. The Inuit are not fanatics of authenticity. They are pragmatists. If a steel knife cuts better, they take a steel knife. If a bone harpoon works better than a factory-made one, they take a bone harpoon. Every tool is judged by one criterion. Does it work or not? After an hour, we reached the sea ice. It is a different world. The tundra is a white plain. Sea ice is white chaos. Pressure ridges, piles of ice blocks, rose 2 to 3 meters high. Cracks snaked between them. The ice creaked and groaned, alive, shifting, dangerous. Beneath our feet, 4 meters of frozen seawater. Beneath the water, seals. Olayak stopped. He was looking at the ice. No, he was listening to the ice. His head tilted slightly, eyes half closed. I stood beside him and heard nothing but wind. He heard something else. There, he said, and pointed. I looked. Nothing. White ice, white snow, white sky, everything white. My eyes could not see the difference. His eyes saw what mine could not. A small hole in the ice, about 10 centimeters in diameter. A breathing hole. A seal is a mammal. It needs to breathe. It maintains several such holes within a radius of several kilometers. It swims up, pokes its nose out, takes a breath, dives back. Every 15 to 20 minutes. Olayak approached the breathing hole. He knelt. He sniffed. I am not joking. He sniffed the ice around the hole. Fresh, he said. That meant the seal had been here recently. The smell of seal breath, oily, fishy, had not yet dissipated. Nanook stuck a thin indicator next to the breathing hole, a small feather on a thin stick. When the seal rises to breathe, the water will stir, the feather will tremble. A signal. Then the waiting began. Olayak stood over the breathing hole, harpoon in hand, motionless. I sat off to the side, on a piece of hide that Nanook had spread out for me. A thoughtful gesture. Without the hide, I would have frozen to the ice in 10 minutes. 15 minutes passed. Olayak stood. Wind tore at the hem of his parka. He did not move. 30 minutes passed. I could no longer feel my toes. I shifted from foot to foot, clapped my hands, breathed into my palms. Olayak stood. An hour passed. It felt as though my legs had turned into 2 pillars of ice. I stood up, jumped, did 10 squats. Olayak stood. He had not moved a single muscle. His breathing was even and slow. Steam rose from under his hood in a thin wisp. I thought about patience, about the fact that in my world, patience means waiting 5 minutes in line for coffee. In his world, patience means standing motionless in an icy wind for 2 hours with a raised harpoon. Different universes. The feather trembled. Olayak's movement was so fast I did not see it. I only saw the result. The harpoon in the water. A jerk. Tense arms. The sinew rope went taut. Something heavy thrashed beneath the ice. Nanook sprang over instantly. Together they pulled. The muscles on Olayak's neck bulged. Nanook braced his feet. From the breathing hole, widened by the strike, a seal's head appeared. Round, smooth, with enormous dark eyes. A ringed seal, about 60 kilograms. They hauled it onto the ice. Oliak placed his hand on the seal's head, stood for a second, silent. This was not a performative gesture. It was real. Gratitude, respect, acknowledgement that one life was given for the sake of another. Then Nanook took out his knife. Butchering a seal on sea ice at -64 degrees is a sight from which it is impossible to look away. Nanook worked quickly, not because he was in a hurry, because at that kind of cold you cannot dawdle. Blood freezes, fat hardens, meat turns to stone. You must butcher the carcass while it is still warm. The first cut from throat to tail, long, precise. The knife went through the fat like through butter. Beneath the skin, a layer of subcutaneous fat 5 to 6 centimeters thick, white, dense, with a slight pinkish tint. There it was, fuel, warmth, life. Nanook separated the fat from the meat with broad, confident strokes. Each piece of fat he placed into a bag made of sealskin. This fat would burn in the kulik. This fat would warm the igloo. This fat, these were batteries. Each piece, several hours of warmth. I tried to calculate. One seal yields roughly 15 to 20 kilograms of fat. A kulik burns approximately half a kilogram of fat per hour. One seal, that is 30 to 40 hours of continuous burning. Almost 2 days of warmth. For a family of 5 in winter, you need roughly one seal every 2 to 3 days, just for heating. Plus food, plus feed for the dogs. The arithmetic of survival. Cold, precise, relentless. Nanook divided the meat into portions. He set the liver aside separately. Olayak took a piece of liver, still warm, steaming in the frost, and bit into it. Just like that. Raw. He held out a piece to me. I looked at the piece of warm, raw seal liver. The liver looked back at me, figuratively. I took it, bit into it. The taste was, how to describe it? Metallic. Rich. Warm. Not revolting. Unexpectedly not revolting. In the cold, after 2 hours of motionless waiting, it was like a sip of hot broth. Calories. Warmth. Energy. My body said thank you before my brain had time to object. Olayak nodded, approvingly. I thought I had just passed some kind of exam. Nanook removed the seal's skin in one piece, carefully, without damaging it. The skin. That is clothing. Comics, mittens, trousers. The skin. That is material for straps, bags, floats. Ringed seal. Waterproof. No modern material combines waterproofing, thermal insulation, and flexibility the way sealskin does. Nanook collected the bones, every last one. Bones. These are tools. Needles, hooks, points, fasteners. Ribs. These are runners for children's sleds. The shoulder blade. That is a cutting board. Nothing is thrown away. Zero waste. Absolute zero. Every gram of the seal finds a purpose. I remembered my apartment. The trash bin I take out every 2 days. Bags, packaging, scraps. I throw away more than an Inuit family uses. This is not a reproach. It is a fact that makes you uncomfortable. The return journey was harder. The sled was loaded. The dogs pulled, but slower. The bags of fat and meat swayed. The smell of blood and fat hung in the air. Ravens appeared from somewhere, black dots on a white sky. They circled above us, waiting for scraps. There were no scraps. The Inuit do not leave scraps. We returned to the igloo. Nanook immediately laid out the fat. Some went into the kulik, some into storage out in the cold. In the Arctic, you do not need a refrigerator. The Arctic is the refrigerator. Fat keeps for months. It does not spoil. It does not melt. It sits and waits for its time. Oliak lit a second kulik. 2 kuliks in the igloo. The temperature rose noticeably. I took off my parka, took off my sweater, was left in a t-shirt, in a house made of snow.
at -64 outside, in a t-shirt. My brain refused to accept this.
My body accepted it with pleasure. Auliak's wife, Silak, appeared from behind the hide that separated the sleeping area from the common space. She silently took the kulik from her husband, trimmed the wick, repositioned a piece of fat. The flame became steadier, brighter. Without a single word, she controlled the fire the way a conductor controls an orchestra, with a light movement of her fingers. Silak hung a pot of melted snow over the kulik. Water. Another gift of the kulik. In the Arctic, there is no liquid water in winter. All water is snow and ice. To drink, you must melt snow. To melt snow, you need fire. To have fire, you need fat. To have fat, you need a seal. Every link in the chain is connected to every other. Remove one, and everything collapses. Silak cooked. Caribou meat in the pot. Seal fat on a separate dish. Dried fish sliced into thin strips. Tea. Real tea. The only imported product the Inuit accepted unconditionally. Tea warms from the inside. Tea is a ritual. Tea is a reason to sit together. We sat around the kulik. 5 of us. Alayak, Silak, Nanuk, their daughter Aklak, 10 years old, and me. A small circle of people in a small circle of warmth in the middle of endless cold. Aklak watched me with curiosity. To her, I was something like an alien, a strange person in strange clothes who did not know how to walk on snow. Aklak already knew how to handle the kulik. 10 years old. She trimmed the moss, added fat, adjusted the flame. Her fingers moved confidently. She had not learned from a textbook. She watched her mother. Every day, every evening. Knowledge was passed on like warmth from one body to another, without words, without exams, without certificates. I asked Olayak what would happen to this knowledge in 20 years, in 50. He was silent for a long time. Then he said that in the settlement hardly anyone builds igloos anymore. There are houses, with heating, with electricity. The young people leave. The kuluk remains with a few families, as a memory, as a skill for an emergency. But an emergency here is not a matter of if, it is a matter of when. Generators break down, fuel is not delivered, a blizzard lasts a week. And then those who remember how to cut snow and burn fat become the most important people in the settlement. Olayak did not complain. He did not romanticize. He simply spoke as things are. The world is changing. The Arctic is changing. The ice is thinner. There are fewer seals. The weather is more unpredictable. But as long as there is snow, there is fat, and there are hands that remember. Life goes on. I lay on caribou hides. The kuluk burned. Soft golden light on the snow walls. The quiet crackling of the wick. The smell of meat and tea. The breathing of sleeping people. Outside, -64. Inside, home. Not a home of brick and concrete. Not a home with a mortgage and a cadastral number. A home of snow and fat. A home that tomorrow will melt, and the day after will be built anew. A home that exists only because someone knows how to build it, and knows how to heat it. I thought that we in cities build homes to live, and the Inuit build homes to survive. And these are different things, entirely different. And the difference between them is 64 degrees below zero. In the morning I was leaving. Olayak stood by the igloo. Steam rose from the opening in the dome. The kuluk burned. A thin stream of warmth in the middle of endless white. He raised his hand. He did not wave. He simply raised it, briefly, like placing a period. I got on the plane. They turned on the heating. Warm air from the ventilation hit my face. Artificial, dry, smelling of plastic. I thought about the kulik, about the soft living warmth of burning fat, about snow walls glowing blue, about the silence, about the seal liver, warm and rich in taste. I returned home.
turned on the heating with a button. The radiators hummed.
It became warm. Quickly, easily, without effort. I sat on the couch and thought that I did not know where this warmth came from. Some boiler, some gas, some pipes. I press a button and I am warm. Between me and the source of warmth, kilometers of pipes and dozens of people I will never see. Olayak knows where his warmth comes from. He obtained it with his own hands. He stood for 2 hours on the ice. He carried it on a sled. He placed it in a stone bowl. He lit it. Between him and warmth, only his hands. Perhaps that is the difference. Not in degrees, not in technology. In the distance between a person and what keeps them warm. If you found this interesting, if you have listened all the way to this point, it means this story found you. Subscribe to the channel. Write in the comments whether you could stand for 2 hours on the ice for the sake of warmth. I honestly am not sure I could do it again, but I am glad I tried. See you next time.